We are living through a quiet yet radical transformation, an exodus not of bodies but of consciousness. Across the world, psychologically mature individuals are disengaging from the central structures of modern life. This withdrawal is not marked by protests, manifestos, or revolutions. It is silent, personal, and deliberate. They are not retreating because of failure, bitterness, or misanthropy. Instead, they are stepping away because the mainstream world has become too shallow, too unconscious, too hostile to authenticity. To remain fully immersed in its machinery would be to violate their own integrity. Carl Jung foresaw this phenomenon. He described a crucial stage in individuation, the lifelong journey toward wholeness, where a person's expanding awareness makes participation in the collective unconscious not only frustrating but psychologically unbearable. He called it the necessary withdrawal. What we are seeing today is this archetypal process on a mass scale, an exodus of the conscious from the unconscious. It is not collapse, it is evolution. This essay explores this shift through 6 stages: the mechanics of the collective unconscious, the death of the persona, the burden of heightened sensitivity, the energetic cost of consciousness, the necessity of the hermit phase, and finally the return, when the withdrawn re-emerge as guides and builders at the edges of society. Society as a theater of the unconscious. To understand why so many are withdrawing, we must first understand what they are leaving behind. Jung taught that beneath our personal unconscious lies a collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of archetypes, myths, and instincts. Ideally, culture helps us bring these archetypes into conscious form through art, religion, and community. But when society itself is unconscious, when it forgets its myths and refuses its shadows, it devolves into autopilot. This autopilot is powered by shared delusions, unquestioned beliefs about progress, success, and morality that no one dares examine. Mass projections, our own disowned shadows flung onto other groups, political rivals, ethnic enemies, or ideological others. Agreed upon shadows, societal sins we collectively permit because acknowledging them would disrupt comfort and continuity. These are not flaws of the system, they are the system. Politics, media, and commerce thrive only because individuals identify with their masks and avoid the deeper questions. For the individuated person, however, these delusions become transparent. Social rituals feel like theater. Debates look like shadow wars. Everyday conversation resembles a dream where everyone is asleep, and you alone are awake, yet constantly pressured to pretend you're dreaming too. This awareness is not glamorous. It is isolating. It produces the first impulse to withdraw. 2. The internal catalyst, the death of the persona. Before awakening, we live primarily through the persona, the social mask designed for acceptance and functionality. A strong persona is useful, but it becomes dangerous when mistaken for the self. Through shadow work, self-reflection, and sometimes suffering, an individual encounters the capital S self, the archetype of wholeness, the totality that unites conscious and unconscious. Once you've touched this deeper self, the persona becomes unbearable. It is no longer a tool, it feels like a cage. At this stage, the awakened individual cannot perform politeness when their soul aches. Echo group opinions they see as empty. Pursue status symbols they know are hollow. They are too real for a world built on masks. The withdrawal that follows is not hostility toward others but fidelity to truth. It is pro-authentic, not antisocial. 3. The burden of heightened sensitivity. Shadow integration has another consequence, it reveals the collective shadow in blinding clarity. Once you've seen your own jealousy, rage, and selfishness without flinching, you can no longer ignore society's projections. Political debates become tragic farces of mutual shadow blame. Social media appears as a digital arena where unconscious fears and desires are performed endlessly. The individuated do not merely notice this. They feel it. Heightened consciousness sharpens sensitivity. Crowds radiate psychic static. News feeds pulse with fear and hostility. The unconsciousness of the collective becomes not just intellectually distasteful but psychically unbearable. Withdrawal, therefore, is not a superiority complex. It is self-preservation. 4. The energetic cost of consciousness. Staying conscious in an unconscious environment drains immense energy. Every social interaction requires invisible labor. Filtering projections hurled your way. Guarding boundaries against absorbing collective negativity. Translating between depth perception and surface chatter. Holding frequency in the midst of psychic static. For the unconscious, society is effortless, they drift with the current. For the conscious, it is like swimming upstream through a storm. The exhaustion is profound, burnout of the soul. Jung observed that for many advanced patients, the cure was not more therapy but new environments, solitude, nature, or circles of like-minded souls. Consciousness is finite. To squander it in a toxic system is spiritual suicide. Withdrawal, then, is a strategic conservation of life energy. The hermit phase, archetypal necessity. This retreat is not random, it is archetypal. In Jungian terms, it is the hermit phase. The hermit is not escapist. He withdraws to incubate wisdom, to consolidate inner wholeness beyond the distorting gaze of society. His lantern symbolizes the light carried inward, not outward, for now. During this phase, the awakened integrate insights from shadow work. Allow the self to stabilize without compromise. Listen to the inner voice in the absence of external noise. Jung's retreat to his Bollingen Tower was a living example. He was not shirking duty but serving a deeper one, fidelity to the psyche's demand for solitude. Those who disappear today are walking this same archetypal path. They are not lost, they are gestating. 6. The return, border dwellers with a gift. The hermit phase is rarely permanent. Individuation does not end in isolation but in return. Yet the return is not to the mainstream. To re-enter the collective unconscious would require betraying the self. Instead, they reappear at the margins, as border dwellers. They re-enter as guides for others facing spiritual emergencies. Artists giving voice to archetypal truths. Builders of new, conscious communities. Mentors carrying maps for those just beginning their own withdrawal. Their silence prepares them to bring gifts society desperately needs. Though their impact is quieter, it is deeper. They seed new forms of collective life at the edges, small sanctuaries of consciousness for the next wave of awakening souls. Withdrawal as evolution. The exodus of the conscious from the unconscious is not decay but evolution. It is the psyche's immune response to toxic environments. If you feel called to withdraw, to shed false roles, to disappear from noise, it is not weakness. It is health. It is fidelity to the self. This withdrawal is ultimately an act of love, love for truth, love for authenticity, love for the possibility of a more conscious humanity. The disappeared are not abandoning the world. They are preparing for its renewal. They are forging tools in silence, maps in solitude, lanterns in darkness. Their disappearance is not an ending. It is a preparation for the only kind of beginning that matters, an authentic one. 7. The archetype of the wanderer. Beyond the hermit lies another archetype, the wanderer. Unlike the hermit, who retreats into stillness, the wanderer moves through the world with an inner detachment. They are no longer tethered to collective expectations, yet they do not reject life. The wanderer embodies freedom, free from the persona, free from collective projections, free from the compulsions of status. They live in society, but not of it. Jung noted that such individuals often appear eccentric, misfits, or outsiders, yet they are paradoxically more whole than those firmly embedded in the collective. The wanderer stage is crucial because it tests integration. It asks, can you carry inner wholeness amidst the impermanence of the world? 8. The tragic dimension of withdrawal. Withdrawal, however, carries tragedy. The individuated often lose old relationships, careers, and identities. Families may not understand. Friends may accuse them of arrogance or apathy. From a collective view, their disappearance looks like abandonment. But from the inner perspective, it is fidelity to the self. Here lies the paradox: individuation always entails some sacrifice. Just as myths of initiation require descent into darkness, the psychological journey requires letting go of old forms. Withdrawal is a small death, the death of the persona, the death of old loyalties, the death of belonging. 9. The shadow of withdrawal. No stage is free of shadow. The danger here is spiritual inflation, the belief that withdrawal makes one superior to the unconscious masses. Jung warned of this: when the ego identifies with the self, it becomes swollen, believing itself godlike. Another danger is permanent exile, becoming so disenchanted with the collective that one refuses the return. This breeds cynicism, bitterness, or sterile isolation. True individuation requires the balance of solitude and engagement, detachment and participation. The test is to withdraw without hatred, and to return without illusion. Withdrawal in history and myth. This archetypal pattern is not new. It recurs across cultures. The desert fathers of early Christianity withdrew into caves and sands to purify their souls. The Buddha left his palace, withdrew into asceticism, and later returned with the middle way. Laozi, according to legend, departed society riding an ox, leaving behind the Tao Te Ching as his gift. Prophets, shamans, mystics, all retreated before they returned. Every culture has known this pattern: retreat, incubation, return. What we witness now is not isolated, but a reawakening of an ancient rhythm. 11. The crisis of collective unconsciousness. Why is this happening so widely today? Because modern society amplifies unconsciousness at a scale unseen before. The digital world is a constant projection machine. Consumerism thrives on inflating personas and exploiting shadows. Politics feeds on division and projection. Technology accelerates the tempo of life until silence itself becomes alien. For the conscious individual, the strain is too great. The psyche refuses. Withdrawal is no longer optional, it is imperative. 12. Withdrawal as resistance. Seen this way, withdrawal is not escapism. It is resistance. By refusing to pour energy into unconscious structures, the awakened weaken their hold. They deny the system their complicity. They live outside its scripts, and in doing so, they create cracks in the facade. Every conscious hermit, every silent wanderer, every artist on the margins contributes to the slow erosion of unconscious norms. Withdrawal is activism at the level of being. 13. The seeds of a new collective. Jung believed individuation was not only personal but collective. As more individuals individuate, the collective itself evolves. Thus, the current exodus may be a gestation period for a new cultural form. The margins where the awakened gather, small communities, conscious networks, artistic enclaves, may one day become the seeds of a future society, one less bound by delusion and shadow. The individuals who withdraw today are midwives of tomorrow's myths. 14. The mystery of return. The return is unpredictable. Some come back as teachers, healers, or writers. Others return invisibly, living quietly but radiating presence. Jung said that even one individuated person has an incalculable effect on their environment, like a candle in darkness. The return is not about scale but depth. It does not matter if one speaks to millions or simply to a few souls. What matters is that they embody wholeness, anchoring the possibility of another way of being. 15. Disappearance as evolutionary threshold. What looks like disappearance is actually metamorphosis. The caterpillar dissolves into formlessness before becoming the butterfly. The seed must go underground before sprouting into light. The great withdrawal we see today may indeed be an evolutionary threshold, a liminal passage for the species itself. Individuation, once the task of a rare few mystics, monks, and sages, is now pressing itself upon thousands, even millions. Humanity is being compelled, through crisis and inner necessity, to step into a new stage of development, one where the individual must separate from the unconscious mass in order to preserve the flame of consciousness. This is not a luxury. It is survival. The collective unconscious, when left unchecked, always breeds destruction. It repeats its old patterns endlessly: wars fought in the name of shadows, ecological devastation driven by unexamined greed, psychic collapse fueled by the emptiness of consumption. These are not random accidents of history but symptoms of an unchecked psyche. The antidote is consciousness. And consciousness does not grow in crowds, in noise, or in the frenzy of collective illusions. It grows in silence, in solitude, in the courage to withdraw and listen to the voice within. It germinates in the wilderness, in the cave, in the quiet room, in the refusal to betray one's self for the comfort of the mask. Closing synthesis: the lanterns in the dark. What we are witnessing is not collapse, but preparation. The withdrawn are not deserters. They are lantern bearers. They step back not because they despise humanity, but because they love it enough to guard the fragile flame of awareness in a storm. They retreat not from hatred but from fidelity to truth. They disappear not to escape, but to gestate. They return not to dominate, but to guide. Jung's vision of individuation was never meant for the chosen few. It was, and remains, the blueprint of human evolution. The psyche itself is trying to grow beyond tribal unconsciousness into authentic individuality. Each withdrawal is not a betrayal of the collective, but an offering to it, because every true individual eventually becomes a seed for the renewal of the whole. As more awaken, more will withdraw. And as more withdraw, more will return, not to the center of the unconscious swarm, but to the edges, where the new world is quietly being built. On these margins, glowing communities will form, sanctuaries of depth, of honesty, of inner work. From these hidden enclaves, the unconscious world will begin to tremble. And one day, when the old structures fracture under the weight of their own illusions, it will be from the quiet spaces where the conscious disappeared that the first signs of renewal will come. Out of the silence, voices will rise. Out of the solitude, maps will be shared. Out of the hidden labor of individuation, a new form of humanity will emerge, less asleep, less divided, less enslaved by its shadows. The lanterns are already being lit. They flicker in the mountains, in the forests, in the quiet apartments of cities. They glow in the hearts of wanderers who have stepped away from the marketplace of noise. They shine in the writings, the art, the whispers of those who have chosen authenticity over approval, depth over distraction, truth over comfort. You will not find them in the centers of power or the stages of spectacle. You will find them in hidden places, at the edges, in the margins, in the silence where the world rarely looks. They move quietly, often unnoticed, but their presence is unmistakable to those with eyes to see. Their light may appear small, fragile against the overwhelming night of unconsciousness, but light does not measure itself against the dark. A single flame, faithfully tended, is stronger than an ocean of shadow. Darkness has no substance of its own, it exists only where light has not yet reached. And so, the small lamps of the awakened are more powerful than they appear, for they carry within them the seed of dawn. The disappeared are not gone. They are preparing. They are weaving maps in silence, crafting tools in solitude, forging wisdom in the furnace of their own depths. They are the midwives of a future that only silence can conceive, the guardians of truths that the noisy world has forgotten. When the old structures crumble under the weight of their illusions, it is these lantern bearers who will guide others through the